my great pleasure to be sitting across from Thomas Ravenel, who is running against Senator Lindsey Graham. And how are you doing today, Thomas?
Today I'm doing great.
Today you're doing great?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
Now, who knows how tomorrow may bring, right?
I'm sure it'll be a good day.
Sure it'll be a good day. Well, that's great.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun.
You're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, getting around the state, meeting voters, talking about various issues.
Spending a lot of money.
Yeah, that's not the fun part of it, though.
Well, I would think that it would be hard every day to be out there spending your money. That really shows a lot of belief in yourself.
Well, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm not spending other people's money or the money of special interest, who I then owe favors to.
Right.
And making promises to the detriment of the voters,
right,
taxpayers, and the consumers on behalf of, these special interests. They basically have bought and paid for the Republican and Democratic parties.
What special interest has bought Senator Lindsey Graham?
I think the military-industrial complex has. They hold him out to be the expert on foreign affairs, but yet he's wrong time after time after time. Just give the most recent example is Libya. He championed that intervention, that foreign intervention, and the rebels were defeated. Gaddafi, he used to be a bad guy, but he gave up weapons of mass destruction. He was helping us defeat Al-Qaeda. His son said, this effort's over. So by providing the air cover to the rebels, the conflict was delayed another 10 weeks. Instead of 1,000 people dying, 11,000 people died. These rebels we were helping then committed genocide, murdered 30 to 40,000 ethnic Africans. And then chaos ensued.
Right.
And as we know, nature abhors a vacuum. And when you topple some secular leader, chaos ensues. And that's a fertile land for these radical jihadists. The secular dictators may be not so nice to their own people. They may even terrorize their own people. But when the jihadists take over, they terrorize not only their own people, but then they export that terrorism, to other countries. So here's what happened in Libya. Immediately the Benghazi tragedy occurs because there's instability there. The people that were providing the police security for Gaddafi, mostly mercenaries from other countries, they then join forces with Al-Qaeda, go into Mali, which is the only democracy in North Africa. They overthrow that government. Now it's a safe haven for the terrorists and Al-Qaeda. Libya itself is a wonderland for the terrorists. And one of the reasons we went in there and to provide air cover to these rebels was to topple Gaddafi, and it was for humanitarian reasons. Well, you cannot walk down the streets of Tripoli without being under threat of being raped or murdered. So what was the point of going in there? But who benefits from these conflicts? The military-industrial complex, the contractors who are making the weapons. They get to sell weapons. Look at ISIS. As we arm the FSA, the Free Syrian Army, they're selling the weapons to ISIS. Half of their force is defected to Al-Qaeda, or Al-Nusra, which is basically Al-Qaeda in Syria. And they sold one of the journalists, the one that was beheaded. The people that we want to help, that Lindsey Graham wants to help.
So should we be?
So he's wrong time after time after time.
But should we be trying to defeat ISIS? Should we be in that?
Yeah, I think they do represent a threat, but we have to understand how we got there. Take a look at these four secular leaders of these countries. They're secular. If Lindsey were to debate me, he would of course say, well, we want to take out the bad guys and then put in the good guys. Oh, well, we did that. Karzai in Afghanistan, now we want to take him out. He's not such a good guy. Or Malachi, who was, they had a secular leader who was, providing order in that country. Saddam Hussein. Now we got Malachi, who is creating disorder, and he has allowed ISIS to take over. We took out the Air Force of Iraq, half of which we took out in the first Gulf War, the other half in the second Gulf War. They could not stop ISIS. even though they bought now F-16s from us, which we have to build from scratch and give them their own set of avionics. So they do not have an Air Force. So as penance for what we've done there, I think we have to provide air cover. We need to bomb ISIS, but no boots on the ground. Absolutely not.
How is that going to work, though, if we do not put boots on the ground?
Well,
Because
first of all,
okay.
you know, and let's go all the way back to a couple of things. Let's talk about Dwight David Eisenhower. Nobody could accuse of being a dove. He warned us in his farewell address after being a war hero, two-term president
Exactly.
of the military-industrial complex. He was talking about the Lindsey Graham of the world. But let's go back before that to George Washington, another war hero.
My God, we're going way back.
Father
Thomas.
of our country,
Yes.
two-term president, gave the same farewell address.
Okay.
Warned us about the military. Let's take a look at what the terrorists, what their goals are. To have the victim state to overreact. Okay? They've induced us to overreact. Al-Qaeda has catalyzed 2 conventional wars that have cost $4 to $6 trillion. It is hot over there in the Middle East as ever. They depend on the Lindsey Grahams of the world. So you have to look at how we get into these situations. And we create these messes. Now we have to go and clean up the messes. Now, our military, you know, should focus on doing a few things well. You know, providing for our common defense,
Protecting the U.S.
protecting the U.S., you know, our way of life, our core national interest. Not trying to democratize the Middle East or try to reorder societies around the world in our image at the point of a gun, or trying to nation build failed states or defend wealthy countries, or trying to use our military as some utopian force for good around the world. This is crazy. It doesn't work. You know, 9/11, when that happened, we spent half the world's military budget. Most of the other half was spent by our friends and allies. None of that. You know, 1,500 nuclear warheads that could be deployed by land, air, or sea. None of that deterred the 19 angry young men that flew those airliners into those buildings. And I would suggest a doubling of the military would have proved equally as irrelevant. But look what the airliners did. It didn't cost the taxpayers a dime. They just started locking up the door to the pilot's cabin. But I believe in counterterrorism, but that's not as expensive as what they're trying to do. Like the Joint Strike Fighter, $400 billion. They just grounded it. Waste of money.
Correct.
So there's a lot of politics going on. And I don't even blame these contractors for playing politics and buying off the politicians. I blame the politicians who are cutting the deals and cutting the checks to people like Lindsey Graham.
So you feel...
And as a result of these policies,
Yes.
we're less prosperous as we expend more blood and treasure. We're less prosperous. We're less free because he wants to eviscerate our Fourth Amendment rights. And we're less safe because now they have more recruits than ever because we engender sympathy with these causes, these terrorist causes. And we don't have to learn this through trial and error. I mean, there are many of examples where democracies, particularly democracies that are not familiar with terrorism, they overreact.
So
There's
in
been a
one
lot of
sentence-
examples.
So in one sentence, in one short sentence, we should do what with the Middle East?
We should get out of the Middle East.
We should get out.
Yes.
Let them fight it out.
They've been fighting it for
I know,
over
they've been
1,000
fighting
years.
forever, yes.
They're gonna, you know, if we're there, it's kind of like Ronald Reagan said one time. If an enemy from another planet came over here, we would join forces with ISIS, trying to kill that enemy, that
Okay.
alien force from another planet.
All right.
Okay. Now, the moment we get out of the Middle East, they're going to start killing each other. When we get involved there, they're going to kill us.
Right.
They're going to be killing somebody.
So we have no business.
Why are we in the crossfire?
Okay, so we have no business being there.
No,
according to
and it's
your
not.
philosophy.
It's not about our oil. We get 20% of our oil needs over there. They're going to sell us out of oil. A lot of people say we have to protect the Straits of Hormuz. No, they starve to death if they can't sell us out of oil.
Sure.
That'd be like saying, well, we have to provide police protection to gain us access to Walmart so they can sell us the goods. No. Walmart's going to pay for security so that we can get access to the Walmart. This is crazy logic.
Okay.
But there's always, there's always some slogan for getting us into these messes. In the 60s, the Vietnam War, it was the domino effect. Got to stop the spread of communism. Now it's, we have to be, we have a global responsibility. It's the world leader. Not the effective George Bush persona, but there's always some reason to pull us into these battles. You know, I believe in a strong national defense. Don't let anybody mistake that. But with serious restraints on trying to be the world's policeman.
Okay, so
I mean, we got 22 returning wounded warriors who commit suicide every day. 22. He wants to tag me for being on a reality show. His reality is worse. 22 people taking their lives. 500 double amputees. The cost, according to a Harvard study, of $46 trillion spent over there in these two wars. Al-Qaeda catalyzed two conventional wars. Cost of $46 trillion, mission accomplished. And that does not count the human cost.
Yeah, that is true. All right, so we should not be over there in Iraq. Now, what about our southern border? What about the immigration issues that we're facing here, Thomas?
Okay, I agree with what Jim DeMint was for, but the unions are against this.
Okay.
And this shows you how the two parties are bought and paid for. You know who's negotiating the whole immigration issue right now? The Chamber of Commerce and the unions.
Okay.
They're the puppeteer, because they are.
Okay. Well,
They're the
explain it to me. I
puppeteers,
don't
and
know
then
this.
they're going to tell their bought and paid for puppets, their politicians, how to vote. The unions do not want a robust worker visa program because they feel like some of these people will come over and compete with non-high school graduates.
Okay.
And take their jobs. But as these people move in, a lot of Americans move up. I've developed over 70 shopping centers. If I can pay a superintendent $70,000, $80,000, he needs a labor force. He needs people down there digging the footers. So the Bracero program in the 50s, when they had a worker visa program where you document, you permit these workers,
Sure.
they can come and go. But, you know, I'd put, there'd be two conditions. One, they can never receive welfare for two reasons. One, it benefits us, the taxpayers, and it also benefits them, so they can not, you know, the Democrats want these 11 million undocumented workers to become a dependent class
Sure.
of voters so they can stay in office.
Right.
They can never vote because they're not citizens, no amnesty. Also, no welfare. No welfare, and they can't vote. And
What about health care?
but 95%.
What about health care?
I'd say that they get no welfare. Obviously, somebody enters into a hospital and is bleeding,
Right.
you know, they're going to have to get care that way. But, so I agree with what Jim DeMint was for, the worker visa program. Also, look at the terrorists. We're looking for needles in a haystack. When you have 11 million undocumented workers, I mean, that creates a lot of forged documents, a lot of cover for the bad guys.
How do we get this 11 million to become documented?
Well, under the Bracero program, when they had a worker visa program, it reduced illegal entry by 95%. In fact, when they would catch one of these guys that were undocumented, the Border Patrol would drive them south of the border, document them, permit them, then take them back to the, you know, to the fields where they were picking crops or, you know, picking vegetables.
Back across.
Yeah, so, and then they come in legally. Then we know where they are.
But we already have 11 million here.
Yeah.
How would you just go about that?
You give people a legal way to gain access. Otherwise, they come in illegally. Now, on the higher end, the HB1 visas, I agree with Romney. I disagree with a lot, but he said, look, staple an HB1 visa to every one of these PhDs that are getting degrees in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, math.
Right.
Said Bill Gates did a study. Each one of these guys, the best and brightest around the world that we kick out, could have created 5 jobs. And that's why he's got a big plant just north of Seattle and Vancouver, Canada, hiring all these PhDs. And they're contributing to the economy of Canada, not America, because the 70,000 HB1 visas are used up in 4 days, only 13% of which are actual workers. The balance are the spouses or dependents.
Okay.
So we need to lift that cap to reflect the demand for these workers and the benefit to our economy, and we need to grow this economy.
So by making these workers legal, that would handle the problem. Now, what about all these people that have been here for 10, 15, 20 years? Same approach?
No, I'm not for amnesty at all.
Okay.
I do believe in legal immigration.
What does somebody do? Do they go to the back of the line and have to come through legally?
That depends.
Okay.
Sometimes there's not a back of the line. I hear that refrain all the time, get in the back of the line, but what if there's no back of the line to get into? Forbes did a study, said that if you want to come in legally, in some instances it's a 100-year-long process. I think that's absurd. Also, look at our problem with Social Security in this country. We used to have 35 workers per retiree, now it's like 2.7. We have a declining population base. We need more workers.
So they would pay taxes and they would pay Social Security and Medicare
I'm
and all
saying
this?
I would look at a reasonable path whereby somebody can come in legally instead of illegally. I believe strongly in legal immigration. We need to widen the avenues towards legal immigration.
What about all these kids that came across the border?
Well, I blame that on our war on drugs, which we've exported to other countries. We have the DEA in this country, but they're in 83 other different countries where we use the carrot and stick approach. Carrot is you have to eradicate all your crops, like down in Colombia, Plain Colombia, it's a big failure. And
Columbia, South Carolina?
South America.
Okay.
South America.
Just
You're
checking here,
close.
just checking.
But you know, you pay them. That's the carrot. And if they don't, and then when you eradicate the crops, all these peasants then move into the arms of these leftist guerrillas like FARC and undermine these fragile democracies down in Colombia. And then the stick approach is if you don't do this, take the carrot and eradicate these crops, and basically empower your opposition, FARC, and these militant groups. If you don't do it, we're going to decertify you from trade, which could bankrupt a lot of these countries if they can't trade with America. And then what happens is, yeah, we may suppress, you know, the drug imports into America from that country, but it moves to another country. It's like pushing down on a balloon and it popping up somewhere else. So what's going on now is prohibition puts $300 billion in the hands of the most violent criminals on the face of the earth.
But what about the kids? That's what I was
So,
asking.
well, here's what's happening.
Yes, okay.
So we're paying these governments down there, either in Nicaragua or, you know, fill in the blank country down there in Latin America, to engage war with these cartels.
Right.
The cartels have hundreds of billions of dollars that the prohibition has put into their hands.
Okay.
So they could bribe the police officials.
Right.
They say, look, we will either kill you or your entire family, or we'll give you $300,000 or $400,000 in bribe money.
Okay.
So you take your choice. And so that's what's going on. And a lot of kids are being killed in the crossfire. And so they're basically for their own, you know, for the sake of their own lives, a lot of them are trying to get out of these war zones. And they're coming to America. They're coming north.
No, but should they be coming across the border? What's the
I'm-
answer? Should
I'm saying we should get-
America take on the burden of raising these kids, which is what is exactly
I'm
happening
saying we
right
should
now.
create the root cause of it, which is our war on drugs. And we've got it all over the world because you know what? Other countries can't even legalize drugs because it would violate the treaty agreements that we have. Look what happened in Afghanistan. We had the warlords and the tribal chiefs were helping American GIs kill the Taliban. Then we decided, the DEA decided to get involved in eradicating the poppy fields, which they've been doing for hundreds of years. That would be like going into Japan and saying, we're going to eliminate your automobile and your electronics industry, take out a 30-year economy.
Sure.
So what happened was the warlords and the tribal chiefs, instead of helping us kill the Taliban, they started helping the Taliban kill American GIs. Now, how smart was that policy? It's true.
Now, wait a minute. Now, come on, Thomas. But you still haven't answered me. What do we do with the kids that are here? We have a tremendous amount
Well,
of
let's end the
children.
war on drugs. And let's stop giving money to the governments to fight these cartels, because the cartels, they have all this money and these weapons,
What
and
should
kids
we
are
do
being
with the
killed.
drug? What should we do with all this drug problem? I understand you're for legalizing drugs.
Well, you know, say what you will about the teetotalers in the 20s, okay? Say what you will. They respected the Constitution. They passed a constitutional amendment. Granted, it's the only amendment that's ever been repealed.
Right.
But what they did was, when they repealed it, they didn't legalize alcohol. By the way, our current drug prohibition is far worse. Back then, mere users of alcohol didn't go to jail, just the vendors and the manufacturers. Now, just mere users are going to jail. But back then, they just said, look, we're going to leave it to the states. They repealed the Volstead Act, which was enabling legislation. Federalism, you know, the laboratories of democracy. We're going to let the 50 states figure it out.
Okay.
One state will get it right. You
One
know,
state
and
will get it right.
And the other 49 can replicate the rightness of that.
Has Colorado got it right?
Well, the problem with that is you've got double jeopardy.
Right.
I mean, look at California. You may have the Chamber of Commerce and the mayor will show up, cut the ribbon for a medical marijuana dispensary. Next day there's a federal raid and everybody goes to prison.
Right, exactly.
So there's double jeopardy. You have to do something. The federal government needs to get out of it and engage the laboratories of democracy.
Yeah, but it's such a moneymaker. I mean, I expect to see the federal government actually get into taxing drugs here eventually.
Well, I think that, all tax money comes from we, the people who live in the states.
Exactly.
Okay, so why send it up there to begin with?
Well, we send a lot of money up there now, Thomas.
Yeah, well, we got these grant and aid programs. I mean, a lot of that needs to be block grant. I talk a lot about that. You know, the crowning achievement of the 90s with Clinton and the Republicans, granted Clinton vetoed it 3 times, and Carville said, well, to get reelected, you better sign welfare reform. They took this grant and aid program, which is all this was started by LBJ in the 60s. He called it creative federalism. You know, they just said, look, we're going to block grant, you know, welfare instead of, you know, having all these strings attached to it, and let the states experiment. And as a result, you know, welfare rolls were reduced in half, and the poverty rate went down to its lowest level in a generation. Now, I understand that Obama has undone this progress of welfare reform through the second stimulus package. But take a look at Medicaid. Same thing. It's a grant and aid program. You know, and there's 16 million bureaucrats whose sole job it is to ensure compliance with this tangled web of red tape coming out of Washington. You know, for every dollar.
How would you ever, even if you get to Washington, how would you ever even untangle this? You know, I look at I look at each person that is running for office, and everybody is the same. We need smaller government. We need less bureaucracy. We need all this. But how can this happen? Truthfully.
Well, you need to be not only a strong vote, but a strong voice. And you need to explain to people, look, government should be like a tidy layered cake. Federal, state, local. Right now, it's like a jumbled marble cake with the tentacles of the federal government in every aspect of our lives.
Exactly.
Take a look at the Medicaid. Even if we wanted to improve quality for the poor, and they say, well, we can't because we're in a regulatory straitjacket. You can't change. And not only that, these 16 million bureaucrats, they belong to hundreds of trade associations whose sole job it is to maintain the status quo, and they're paying off politicians.
So how do we separate that out?
Well, we got to get away from these two parties, these two bought and paid for parties. That's why I'm running as an independent. If we're going to have true change, it has to come outside these two bought and paid for, increasingly indistinguishable parties. You know, that's why as an independent, you know, I'm free from party politics. You know, I'm not beholden to special interests. You know,
but is anybody supporting your supporting your bid? I know you're supporting it, but is anybody else supporting it?
You know, everywhere we go, our conversion rate's pretty high.
Okay.
You know, my problem, we got in kind of late.
Right.
You know, an advantage running is starting early. But everywhere we go, a lot of people saying he makes a lot of sense. I like what he's saying. You know, we're on air 1,000 gross rating points all over the state this week. We've been up in.
You're not in my radio station, Thomas.
Well, we need to fix that.
And we do need to fix that, absolutely.
Yeah, let me call my media buyer.
Okay.
I got my communications director right here.
All right.
Jared.
Okay.
We need to fix that. But there's a lot that needs to be fixed, but it's not going to happen within this two-party duopoly on power in Washington. You know, George Washington said that the end of our republic would be factionalism, which is today's parlance for, you know, the two-party system.
Okay.
Party politics. And you see this wave of, look what's going on in England right now. You had 2 major members of the Tory party, which is their equivalent to the Conservative Party, or the Republican Party. They've defected to the Independent Party. They want to be independent. You know, before I entered the race, the voters really didn't have a choice. They had a choice between somebody who wants to take most of your wallet and a lot of your liberties, and somebody who wants to take, you know, most of your liberties and a lot more of your money. I want to protect both, your freedom and your prosperity.
Well, you know, I think that's admirable. But I think you also have a very uphill battle, don't you, Thomas? I mean, you say that your personal life is your Achilles heel.
Well, I also say my personal life is my problem.
Right.
Lindsey Graham's public life is your problem. It's everybody's problem.
Okay.
And, you know, a founding father of our country. He was, incidentally, he was not father to any one individual, unlike myself. I just recently became a father.
Yes, we know.
And that's been a catalyst for a lot of change in my life. But
why has it changed your life?
Well,
short sentence, short, not an hour diatribe here, short sentence.
I now know the true meaning of responsibility. And unless you have your own child.
50-some years and you've never known the true meaning of responsibility?
Believe you me, I understand it now. Yeah, but I mean the true meaning of responsibility, it doesn't really hit you till you have your own child.
Yeah. So.
And, not that should disqualify someone from running for office. I mean, obviously, you know, George Washington not the father of one individual, but he's the father of the country.
So you believe that if you were to get there, that you would be able to make changes in Washington.
Yeah, I'm not beholden to any special interests.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at all the log rolling that goes on, like with the farm bills, or what goes on with the military-industrial complex. There's so much deal-making, including among the parties. I'll support your welfare state. You support my warfare state. Or,
well, that's why we used to have so much pork, and that's why. Is that part of the reason? Is that part of the reason, though, that we have a Washington D.C. which can get nothing done? Because it used to be they made deals, and now they're not making any deals, so therefore nothing happens.
Well,
it's hard to get somebody.
They make a lot of deals when it comes to passing incumbency protection laws.
Exactly, but it's very hard to get somebody in Nebraska to vote for the Port of Charleston.
Well, here's what they do. Take the farm bill. Okay. On a standalone basis, there's no way we could have sugar twice the world's price, which doesn't save us jobs, low-wage jobs. It costs us high-wage jobs. People in the candy manufacturing companies move to Canada, not Mexico or China. Mm-hmm. But the way to do that is, the senators in Florida get together with the senators in New Hampshire and in the Northeast. They get together with the Midwest farmers. And, of course, they pass all these bills that raise the prices for the average American farmer, an average American consumer by $200 at the dinner table. And they get the Democrats along and say, well, we'll just give your constituents more food stamps.
Right.
And so the average taxpayer / consumer, yet again, gets the shaft. Because these people are being bought off by the people. Because the allure of power is so strong. They want to stay in power. They need campaign cash. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to please not you, the voter. They're going to please the people that are paying for their campaigns. I'm basically self-financing.
I know you are. Now, how about minimum wage? What do you think about that? There's a big discussion about minimum wage. We put dollars back in the pocket. Mm-hmm. I, as a personal small business person, don't see raising the minimum wage because I feel, let me just finish, because I feel I'm not going to hire somebody for minimum wage. Mm-hmm. I'm going to hire them for what I feel that I can work with and then give them raises based on their ability to perform.
Well, I've talked to young African-American teenagers. They lose jobs. You're taking away basically the first rung of the economic ladder upon which they could climb up and learn.
Are you saying if you move the minimum wage? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but they're saying they need a living wage. But what if you're just a teenager and you've got 5 siblings and a father and a mother are working? It's not like you're supporting the whole family. You're just learning a trade. You're learning a work ethic. You're learning a sense of responsibility. Why take that away? What somebody pays you is not even really a negotiation between the employer and employee. It's based on your productivity. What are you worth?
Right.
If you're only worth $6, why would I pay you $8? If you're worth $1 million, why would you work for $500,000? It's for the
that's
government.
What you could get, Thomas.
it's what are you worth?
Right.
How productive are you? But you're not going to learn a skill or a trade if you can't get that first job. I remember.
So
I got my first job. I worked for free. I learned how to be a real estate developer and make a lot of money by going up to Washington and working for a developer for free. I just wanted to learn, at the feet of the master. Mm-hmm. And one of the best in the business. He was my cousin.
Okay.
And so, yes, I had some advantages. Yes, I did go to Citadel, and I had some connections.
Okay.
And that gives me, some would say, an unfair advantage. But the fact is, I got paid nothing. I didn't get minimum wage. But it's the education that I learned that allowed me to go forth and create thousands of jobs.
Some would say you had quite an education there, Thomas, with your life.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
About our government. I've studied a lot.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe strongly now in the wisdom of the founding documents. The Constitution, the original intent, as amended. Mm-hmm. And I believe strongly in the wisdom of those documents. And the founders, they were students of history. They studied thousands of years of people's struggle for freedom.
Do you think it's still a relevant document?
Well, I think that because the cornerstone of our Constitution, and the philosophy, of course, was set forth in the Declaration of Independence, putting freedom at its cornerstone has allowed us the prosperity unimaginable to the Founding Fathers in their wildest dreams. But getting away from it and treating it as a living document I mean, the virtue of a constitution is it's not changeable
Right.
unless you go through the constitutional amendment process.
Correct.
But by getting away from that has led to rampant indebtedness and is burying our children under a sea of debt. And we absolutely, and it all started with the court packing scandal on 37th, and then LBJ's creative federalism. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have happened that have gotten us to where we are. We're not 17.7 trillion in debt. You got to factor in the unfunded liabilities. We're 140 trillion dollars in debt, and people like Lindsey Graham wants to raise the debt ceiling 6 times. He promised not to raise your taxes, but he raised some $620 billion on workers. Payroll taxes went from 4.2 to 6.2. He raised, small business, took it from 35% to 39.6. I mean, look at the fact that our corporate tax rate is the highest in the world. It's like twice what the OECD
Yeah, but
countries
everybody
are.
talks about they're going to do something about it, Thomas, and
First you got to talk about it. Have you ever heard Lindsey Graham talk about the corporate tax rate? All he talks about is invading another country or invading your emails.
There you go. All right. Now, I got to ask you, it's got to be tough, though, Thomas, not to be able to vote for yourself.
Well, I do. I can vote for myself. I've got a letter from the federal government that says that I can indeed vote for myself.
You can.
Yeah, I have a letter.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they gave me a letter.
Okay.
I thought it was odd that that I couldn't, but then I've got this letter that says that I can.
I thought
I
thought convicted felons couldn't vote. Period. Can you only vote for yourself, or can you vote generally?
Give me your email address, and I'll email you a copy of the letter.
No, I mean, I don't need to,
Yeah.
if you're telling me that's the way it is, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I didn't think that
Yeah.
was something that they
Yeah.
could do.
Yeah, I mean, I think our justice system needs to be corrected. I mean, we have 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's prison population, mostly because of this war on drugs, and which creates a lot of problems.
Should we legalize drugs?
Well, again, I think the federal government should get out of it and leave it to the states.
Should South
You know-
Carolina legalize drugs then?
Whatever the people of South Carolina want to do, I'm running for federal office. I want the federal government out of it.
Okay.
And here's the thing about federalism. If you don't like the laws of South Carolina, you can vote with your feet, move to the next state, and then that creates a competition, and that drives taxes down, it drives delivery and quality of services up. It's just like the free market. You got the 50 states all competing for businesses and for taxpayers and a tax base, and we can learn from the other states. They can learn from us.
Mm-hmm.
It allows us to be creative. Central planning doesn't work. There's a fatal conceit Hayek talked about. A group of experts in Washington or some far-off capital are going to design a system that would then supplant the trillions of decisions hundreds of millions of Americans would make in their own mutual self-interest. I mean, that's a disaster. We need to, a lot of government needs to be devolved to the states. A lot of it needs to be privatized. A lot of it needs to be cut or eliminated. The Postal Service, they don't even allow competition.
No, they don't.
In New Zealand, they at least allow competition. They don't, for first class mail. So look at the air traffic control. They privatize that in Canada. Mm-hmm. People say, well, that's really dangerous, Well, because it's so dangerous, you don't want the government doing it. You want the innovation and the efficiency that would come out of the private sector. So, I believe in free markets. I was reading the other day, this maid, Bangladeshi maid, was bragging she had the same cell phone as the President of the United States. I mean, that is an egalitarian outcome that the left professes to want. But I can guarantee you her children will not get the same education or the same health care. They'll be stuck in government-run monopolies. With the cell phone, you got people in the free market every day. How do I make it better, cheaper, give you more of the things you want?
Sure, exactly.
In government-run monopoly, why would you want to make it better, deliver better quality? You don't get paid for that.
Right. All right. Now, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. We're going to run this tomorrow afternoon. 2 minutes, and we're going to run this on. Is it Wednesday or Thursday? Thursday, I think, afternoon. Why? Why should you take Lindsey Graham's seat?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. You're on.
Okay. Well, it's not just Lindsey Graham. It's the entire system, this two-party system. Like many of you, I'm just amazed that these elected officials focus more on party politics in the next election instead of solving America's problems especially in like the last 6 years of economic turmoil. I mean, they care more about pleasing the people, the special interests that are bankrolling their campaigns so they can stay in power, serve themselves, while we foot the bill. Yeah, before I got in this race, you really didn't have a choice. You had a choice between one guy, like I said earlier, he wants to take all your liberties and most of your money, and another guy wants to take all your money and most of your liberties.
Sounds like a good trade-off here, doesn't it?
I want to protect both your freedom and your prosperity. And I'm not beholden to special interests. And that's why I'm running as an independent. Free from party politics. Not beholden to the special interests. This is a wave that's occurring. Look what's going on with Pat Roberts in Kansas. Or look at these people in England. People are getting away from these two parties that collude, to protect their own power. A lot of good men and women are compromising and rationalizing. We need to go along with this so as to stay in power, so I'll be around for the next vote. But when the next more important vote comes along, they rationalize and compromise more. So we see ourselves where we are now. We're rampant indebtedness, and we're leaving our future generations buried under a sea of debt.
So that's why they should vote for you?
That's why.
That's why. I'd ask you one last question.
Status quo and getting it done.
Okay.
So if you're unhappy with your current choice for U.S. Senator, I would humbly suggest that I represent an alternative. I'm Thomas Ravenel, the independent candidate for U.S. Senate.
All right. I've got to ask you one last question. What about term limits?
I'm for them, absolutely.
What kind of term limits would you like to see?
Well, up there now,
number of years or terms, it doesn't matter.
I think in the House 3 terms, in the Senate 2 terms. So I think we have 2 terms. A term limited to presidents, especially after FDR. I think it's a good thing, and that people need to go and live under the law, because of course Congress exempts themselves from their own laws. They need to live under the laws that they pass. So
term limits. Okay. All right, Thomas Ravenel, good luck, and thanks so much for coming by and sitting down with us. We'll be playing that interview on Thursday afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
All right. Bye-bye.